It's the oil sands companies who need to have confidence that they're going to be allowed to expand production in order to be able to fill a pipeline. And at the moment, because of the laws that are in place, they don't have that confidence. So that's why we have to deal with these things as a package. The conversation with both the Mr. Poilievre as well as with the Prime Minister Carney was the same. It's what can we do to build resource projects, build resource pipelines, be able to get our confidence back in our private investment sector. And I'm really hopeful that the Prime Minister will be able to meet that target of being able to sign an agreement with us by mid-November. We want to maintain the carbon pricing at the provincial level. We've had carbon pricing since 2007. It's worked for us. We've invested nearly $2 billion in CO2 technologies, CO2 abatement technologies, including the Shell Quest project, the Carbon Trunk Line. We've mapped out 25 of our reservoirs for capturing CO2 in pore space. We have supported hydrogen. We supported bitumen beyond combustion, geothermal, direct air capture, lithium, nuclear studies. So it is worked for us. We want to be able to maintain that at the provincial level because, quite frankly, we don't think that the federal government would have the same level of investment in those kinds of technologies as we've been able to have in Alberta. The change to the tier program was really to allow the large companies who are big payers into the program. The bitumen companies pay about $300 to $400 million a year into the program. We want them to be able to recycle that back into supporting the Pathways project. So that was the purpose, is that we know that it's going to be an expensive project. We're prepared to offer an ITC of 12% rebate on capital cost, and the changes to tier were to enable that. We also had to freeze the carbon price at $95. You'll recall Quebec's carbon trading price is only $41. So we're already well above what the carbon trading markets are showing us. And the U.S. is going in a different direction. So we've got to have a price point that makes sense to continue having the industry be viable, but also high enough that it encourages investments in those technologies. The federal government's own Canada Growth Fund, when they're doing contracts for differences, they're signing those contracts at $86.50. Our price is at $95. So we think we're in the ballpark, but those are things that are open for discussion.
I'm just curious, would you support taxpayer dollars going into the construction of Keystone? And if Keystone was to be built, would you still want an additional pipeline to the West Coast?
We are taking a view all of the above. I mean, I think the world is now, instead of doing backcasting of where they want oil to be by 2050, they're doing forecasting based on what current policies are. And what I'm seeing is that they're aligning around the idea that by 2050, we may need 120 million barrels a day. So that's up from what we have today. And we think Canada should have a growing share of that growing market. So I would say all of the above. We think that there's an opportunity to go south, there's opportunity to go west, there's opportunity to go east, potentially to Churchill. So those are the things that we're looking at. But we just need a commitment on the part of Canada that they're going to partner with us on getting our products to market.
Dollars going towards
I don't think it's a success if taxpayer dollars have to be spent to build pipelines. Pipelines should be built by the private sector. If we're going through this exercise, we're doing it so that we can restore investor confidence again. We had $500 billion worth of private capital, we estimate, that was destined for our market that went elsewhere. So I don't think that there's a shortage of private sector dollars as long as you've got a regulatory environment that's going to support that investment. And that's what we're working towards.
I wonder also how you can promise stability to global investors when you've sort of put Alberta on the path to a referendum, and one that, you know, has legal questions around the legitimacy of 200,000 people putting the fate of a G7 country up to a coin toss, you know, legal questions around whether it adheres to the Clarity Act, international law around the recognition of nations, indigenous land title, and the experience of Quebec and its success or lack of success in seeking independence. How can you be confident this is a proper way of proceeding?
Well, as you know, I haven't done that. I've been supporting a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Thomas Lukasik is the person who's behind that petition campaign. And from what I'm reading, he sounds like he's gotten 200,000 signatures. So it may well be that he gets enough signatures for it to be able to put to a vote. It's also, he's operating on the old rules, which were having a higher bar and a lower period to collect. So that law was in place before I got in. So I would say that I'm watching it with great interest. And I've told Prime Minister Mark Carney that Justin Trudeau created an independence movement in Alberta, and he can take the wind out of it. all he has to do is just address the 9 bad laws that have depressed our economy for the past 10 years. And when I worry about investment capital, yeah, I'm really worried that we're going to have in the future the same 10 bad years that we had over the last 10 bad years because of the federal Liberal policies. So I would say that that's been the biggest depression to investment capital in our province. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get to an agreement by mid-November so that we can turn the page on that.
Premier Eby obviously is really ramping up his criticism of your pipeline proposal, calling it a fantasy. So how are you going to deal with the politics of that, given that you feel so strongly against this idea?
Well, I think Premier Eby's comments are un-Canadian and they're unconstitutional. I think that the Supreme Court has determined that the reason we have a country and have given trade and commerce power and control over ports and interprovincial infrastructure to the federal government is for exactly this reason, so that a parochial premier isn't able to block nation-building projects. So I think that the courts have been pretty clear on that. And I would hope that Prime Minister Mark Carney would realize it's his obligation to make sure that these kinds of projects get built. When you look at the value of bitumen, we believe that this project, if we could build it at 1 million barrels a day, even at today's prices, that would generate $20 billion a year for the Canadian economy, of which the governments take about 40%, and it's about half that goes to the federal government and half that goes to the provincial government. So that is a very high value, long-term return that all it takes is the Prime Minister to say yes. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get to that by mid-November.
You pledged for Quebec to exploit natural gas. So could you explain how does that specific message on natural gas for Quebec could serve your message of a need for a pipeline in Alberta?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are connected. The first part is we've seen a deterioration of the manufacturing base in both Quebec and Ontario. And why is that? Well, manufacturing is very energy intensive. And now we have a situation where all of the power grids are constrained. And so if we're going to turn that around, we have to be investing in energy. Hydroelectric projects take a long time to come on stream, whereas natural gas can come on stream in a matter of years. And Quebec is 100% dependent on the United States for its natural gas supply. It gets it from Pennsylvania. Used to get it from us, but because of market changes, they now get it from the United States at higher price than they'd be able to get it from Western Canada, incidentally. But they also have about a 200-year supply of natural gas beneath their own feet in Quebec. And so they could be energy independent by developing out that resource, by putting it onto LNG export facilities and supporting Europe. Right now, gas comes from Alberta down to the Gulf Coast at a discount and then gets sold to Poland for $15 an MCF. Quebec could actually cut out that supply chain and be able to get those new markets with all the revenues associated with it, and also provide a new source of energy security that will allow them to expand their manufacturing base. So that's my message to Quebec, is that you have things that we want to buy. We want to buy steel. We'd like to be able to have Canadian companies that build the 42-inch pipe that we need rather than having to go to the U.S. We'd like Canadian companies to build the axles that we're currently getting from Quebec and the steel beams that are from the U.S. The steel beams we're currently getting from the U.S. We want to be able to have natural gas turbines and the whole supply chain for AI data centers. We'd love to be able to get that from provinces like Quebec and Ontario rather than the U.S. So those are I think the constructive comments we need to have. So the next stage that we went to is the chamber president, Isabelle, proposed that we get the chambers of Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec together with the premiers of Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta to talk about how we can bring our supply chain home. And what does that look like? And I think that's a very exciting discussion, but make no mistake, if we're going to go back and rebuild our manufacturing base, we need to have a secure supply of energy to do it. And natural gas is one of the best options.
I just wanted to go back to the bitumen pipeline that you tried to start with the $14 million you announced a few days ago. Following your announcement, a group of First Nation chiefs came out saying, we don't want a pipeline coming our way. We don't want, not now, not never. How do you go forward from there?
Well, you should go talk to the other First Nations chiefs who said the opposite. I mean, we've been supported by the Indian Resource Councils. Stephen Buffalo is the chair of that and part of our Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation. We also have support from Dale Swampy, National Coalition of Chiefs, who's also a voice from the community that wants to develop resources. So we have to remember that there is not unanimity in any province. There's not unanimity among any nations. And it's our job to do the consultation and do it right. And so that's part of the reason why my Indigenous Relations Minister, Rajan Sawhney, has already visited Port au Prince Rupert, begun the conversation with leadership. I think she's called 24 chiefs already. And we wanted them to know that we believe that the only way this will get built is with significant Indigenous ownership. And we have the ability to help underwrite that. And we'll see where the conversation goes.
In your meeting with Prime Minister Carney yesterday, did you get a sense that he would be willing to repeal any of the 9 bad laws you see? Like, would he be willing to backtrack on other environmental policies?
Well, we're talking about that. I mean, I think he understands that there needs to be a repeal or substantial revision. And let's be frank, I mean, he did repeal the retail carbon tax. He did pause for 60 days, but also delayed the implementation of the net zero cars when he realized that it was impossible to implement it in January of 2026. That was one of the ones that was on our list as well. So I think he's demonstrated that if something isn't working, that he's prepared to repeal or modify. And so I don't want to get ahead of our potential agreement, but do know that is factoring into the discussions that we hope to have an answer for by Grey Cup.